Alright, what does g of -3 equal? Well, that means I take the function g of x and I plug in -3 for both x's. And that's what I did. Now it's just the order of operation. Exponents, multiply, and add. So g of -3 equals 51. F of -4, grab -4, plug it in for the x, and you get your 5. G of x is equal to -12. Well, that means g of x is equal to -12. So you plug -12 in for g of x. So instead of writing that, you write 12. So I wrote -12 here, added it to both sides. To solve that, I factored, and there I am. F of x is equal to 8, so I put f of x and put it equal to 8. Solved, and I got my -5. Where do the parabola and the line intersect? Well, that's just putting them equal to each other using substitution. Solving the system, add x squared to both sides, subtract 8x from both sides, add 14 to both sides. I factored out a 2, or you could say you divided each term by 2, and then I factored. Got my x equals 2 or 4. So my x is 4 or 2. Plug in 4 into one of the equations and you get out 2. Plug in 2 into one of the equations and you get out -2. To graph it, you just plot points. And they intersect at 2, -2 and 4, 2. Solve by factoring. Well, you have to have it equal to 0. Use the zero product property, so I subtracted all that stuff over to here, and then I factored it. These two multiply together to be the 3x squared. These two have to multiply together to be 4, so my two choices here are 4 and 1 or 2 and 2. I just plugged them in and see if it worked. This gives me -6. This gives me -2. When you add those together, you get -8. And then zero product property says if I have two numbers that multiply together to equal 0, one of them has to be 0. So 3x minus 2 equals 0. You would add 2 to both sides and then divide by 3. So add 2 to both sides. So then I got it equal to 0, and I factored out an x, and then it had a 2 in common, so I pulled the 2 out also. And then I factored this part. My two choices here are 2x and 2x, or 4x and 1x. So I just use those combinations. I could go 1 and 15, or 3 and 5, 3 and 5. Okay, there's just those combinations, so I just tried them out. Some of you make a box to factor. It doesn't matter how you factor. You just got to factor. When I multiply those together, I get +6. When I multiply those together, I get -10. When you add them up, you get -4x. I get one answer for this guy, one answer for that guy, and that also gives me an answer. So now, get it equal to 0. Then I can use the quadratic formula. Some of you had the quadratic formula down wrong. You got to memorize that. -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So there's my b. Squared is 9. A -3 for a -b makes it a +3. And this is where most mistakes happen, is this -50. When you multiply that times that, it ends up being adding, so that's how I got the 609. And then you just type that on your calculator. Domain, possible x's. Well, my x's go from -6 all the way over to 5. I cannot be 5, so that's why it's not equal to 5. My range is my possible y values. -2 all the way up to +3 can equal 2, can equal 2, so that's why they're both equal, or 3, that's why it's equal. So my domain goes all the way to -5 and all the way to infinity. My range starts at -1, goes all the way to infinity. And this one's just a list of points. So my x's can be at 6, -6, -2, 0, and 3. And then my y's could be -2, 0, and 4. That's all it is listing what are the possibilities. Multiply by 12, which is the common denominator. So 12 times 35 divided by 6 is 70. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times x is 3x. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4 times the top gives me the 8x. Combine like terms. Subtract 15 over. Distribute. Watch that negative. Combine like terms. Add 8x to both sides. Add 6 to both sides. And most people did very well on this one. I have adjacent over hypotenuse, so that'd be cosine. So the cosine of 35 degrees is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then I just solve that. And then the sine of 25 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse. And the tangent is just the opposite over adjacent. And on that one, use inverse tan of this number, gives you that. Alright.